Hello, welcome to another episode of the Winning with Insights podcast. My name is Mike. I am the founder of GTM Diagnostics, a market research firm specialized in win-loss analysis. And today I have a very special guest in Paul Sullivan. He is the founder of Arise GTM, a B2B go-to-market consulting firm with their own proprietary framework called the Arise framework. Paul, thank you so much for coming on today and being open to share your story. So, Paul, please make a short introduction about yourself.
Sure. Mike, thanks for having me here today. My name is Paul Sullivan, as Mike just said. I am the founder of Arise GTM. I've been consulting on go-to-market strategies for around 15 years. My current business I've been in around 8, and we work with early stage startups right through to enterprise-sized companies, either optimizing failing go-to-market strategy or working with enterprises when they spin out new technologies.
It's a very interesting field, and I'm curious what in your past has happened, or were some of the experiences that you've had that actually led to you founding Arise.
Yeah, it's a funny one. When I was about 15, when I was leaving school, I want the internet websites in particular were just becoming a thing, and that really piqued my interest. But both of my parents were in banking, and my aunt was our careers officer at the school, and she was like, "No, this internet thing won't be anything. You go and follow your dad and your mum." And so, yeah, I did that. And so I dropped out of my A levels and went to work at JP Morgan when I was quite young, and I automated my own job within about 6 weeks of being there. I just this knack of emotion. That's all I can say. I couldn't write code. I didn't really, I didn't really understand how a system worked, but I knew what should happen. And so, I just said to my boss one day, why do we do this? This is just two systems talking to each other. But yet you've got people here manually printing out reams of paper every morning, ticking things back, looking for breaks, and then going back and doing that. Oh, surely we just need a report that either says, there's the break, there's the account, there's the number, or no report, no breaks. And he was just like, yeah, go and investigate that. And so I went off to IT and I said, look, this is what I think should happen. And I'm like, yeah, we'll write that script in about 2 hours. And like, they've been doing that for ages. That one thing saved 54 man hours a week just by doing that. Right. And so that was when I was like, right, I like this IT stuff. Maintained the job I was doing, went from JP Morgan to Morgan Stanley, did another IT project there, went to Credit Suisse, did another IT project. Never in IT, got to UBS. And then that was when I wanted to work in Change the Bank, which was early fintech. I was about 27 at the time. And oh God, that's 20 years ago. That, that was, yeah. So, and I basically was working on the trading floor. I was running, like swap support desk. And then I just said, look, I want to go and work in this area. This really interests me. And they said to me, but you don't have a degree. You can't go and work in that area. So I don't have a degree and I'm working on the trading floor. Like, what's the difference? But everyone at that point, it was IT consultants. And so I said, I'm going to leave. And they said, yeah, of course you are. And I did. And then I just left, right? And that was 2008, which was probably the worst time to leave. And yeah, that was crazy. And then I came out of there. We had the global crisis. I got through that, started consulting. Then I opened a publishing company because I'm quite a strong copywriter. And so we had that for about 6 months. Selling advertising was not paying the bills. And so we pivoted to become an e-commerce business. So we started that by selling websites to retailers and then pivoted out of print into e-com, worked with Nike, Adidas, Sky, some really big brands. Blew that business up because I thought I'd cracked it and I actually had not. So that was an experience. Opened another agency, got bought out by one of our clients and I became a de facto CTO. So we built a game called My Vote, which was a demographics game and it was quite ahead of its time that way because it was all about signing in with Facebook and then learning how different people play and think against each other. but it just wasn't a game. It was like 3 questions a day. I was like, this is a mobile app. This is not engaging. What it felt like to me was a very good way of audience understanding. And at the time, I would have connections to people like dunnhumby, who built the Tesco. If you're familiar with Tesco, the big retailer,
Mhm.
they built their card saving app, and I was like, we really go and talk to these guys, because the way I see this is it's for helping you understand where to launch products. So if you build that app, you could gamify it. For playing the game, you get extra credit, club card point. That would help you understand where you might want to launch new products in the country or wherever you are. And I think that made a lot of sense to me. But the other people, they said no, and then they tried to build more games into the game, and it just blew up. And so after that, I decided to go back on my own. I set up a consulting firm, and then in 2017, I closed that business, took 4 clients, and then we became what is now Arise GTM. And I've been working with some big companies ever since. And yeah, fintech, mainly SaaS, B2B SaaS and fintech, management consulting, and commercial real estate.
That is quite a journey that you've been through. And now
Ah,
it all came together basically in Arise. And I'm curious, like what are some of like the most common like problems that you solve for your clients with Arise GT?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think I should start with my own business. So when
Yeah.
COVID hit the world, right, we all suffered from that. Um, the business was doing okay, but it was nowhere near where I wanted it to be. And I was looking really at the team that we'd built. Um, and I definitely didn't see that the team that I had was going to be a team that was going to bring me successfully out of COVID. And so we made everyone redundant, and I just kept the business going basically by working really hard, but by also giving me the time to look at what was going wrong. And a lot of it really was because of what was in my head wasn't easily transferable to be executed. And that's when Arise was born. So it was like, what is our approach? How do I see the world? And just to kind of back that up, during COVID, I sat about 16 different courses, medpic, product marketing, all these different types of courses, professional certifications. And most of it was just because I had the worked experience or earned experience. I just didn't have paper behind me to kind of to back that up if
Yeah.
you went to LinkedIn or whichever. So it was really just to close the loop. And then out of that, I built Arise. And Arise actually stands for Assess, Research, Ideate, Strategize, and Execute. And it just became a process that this is how we should be doing things. And so as we came out of COVID, I brought in more experienced people. So team size like halved, and I had like more experienced people, which paid dividends because they were able to kind of use their own experience to understand what it is I was trying to do and bring that to the table. So we run this business, we run this process on my own business. We pivot really from being a traditional agency that looked like it's got like a smorgasbord of services that it provides. And then you find out there's 3 people behind it and there's 20 odd services that they say they do. It doesn't make sense, right? But also I worked with a guy called Robert Craven. Robert Craven is like quite a big agency coach, and he's someone that Google roll out regularly to work with their big agencies. And, there was another guy called Max Trainer in the US. And I did a short course with him where he was getting us to think about creating that proprietary thing that agencies should have. And again, Arise was that was where that kind of sense of what do we do? How do we do it? How can we make sure that we guarantee the results that we're gonna do? And so it
Yeah.
became, I want to understand and help you understand where you are today. That's the assess piece. Then we're going to research the market. We're going to talk to your customers. We're going to talk to the market. We're going to run SWOT, quarters, 5 forces. We're going to look at
Mhm.
everything. What can we learn that we don't yet know? And we want to take that off of the business. Then we get into the ideation stage, which is where we start getting creative. Now we understand where your business is. We understand where the opportunities are. How can we think about these opportunities and these new directions we could potentially go? And that's when you're bringing the company on that journey with you. So you're working with multiple teams. Then you get into the strategic part of that, whereas we're taking those ideas and we're making strategic decisions out of them. And then obviously that leads into the execution and the long-term support with those companies. And so the process makes sense. It felt overwhelming. And believe me, we went, at first it was, we could do this in 90 days. Then we got it down to 45 and now we've got it down to 30. So because we've become so practiced at it, we were actually shaving 2 months off it in 3 or 4 years of practicing the process, right? And so we pitched that to Wiley, as I mentioned to you, article to Wiley. I've got that book coming out, Go to Market Uncovered in the spring next year, 2025. We did a collaboration with Columbia Business University, and we built a mini MBA out of the process, which is signed off for CPD criteria in the UK. And what we're trying to do is look at how we make it bigger. Like, yes, we've worked with clients. We've helped. We work with a 2-person business, which would be someone we typically wouldn't approach. And we rebuilt their whole business, the messaging, positioning, the value prop. We productized their services. They were trying to go up market. They were speaking to people like Amazon and people like that. It was a well-being company, well left at where we would usually be, which is why I'm talking about it. They're called the Reinhardt Group. Redesigned their whole brand. So we updated their brand, we productized their services, we rebuilt their positioning and their messaging. And all of that came through service design principles, the Arise framework, and all of those things that we've rolled into that. And they're doing well now. We also work with a company called Direct Sourcing, DSSI. They've been acquired now. But again, they were not strong in marketing. They'd sold their way to a decent number. They sell to $1 billion companies. They're definitely procurement optimization. So tail and spend. So it's where the companies are like wasting money. They're going and optimize that and they're using AI. But because they'd sold their way to a good level of success, marketing wasn't something that they'd done. And when they brought us in for a referral from a company called Rollworks for account-based marketing, we just assessed what was there. And we were like, I don't even know what you've been sold as marketing in the past, because this really is bad. Like 200-300 word blog posts, and it just wasn't anywhere where we needed to be. So we said, look, this is what we do, and this is how we're going to move you along. Obviously, we were able to use evidence to show them from the assess stage they've got no traction online. There was no SEO presence. All these other things that you needed to fix before we could get back into that ABM strategy. And we did. And so we reorganized the business in terms of their marketing presence. We rewrote their copy. We took out all of the stuff that was unperforming. We did a lot of work to understand their business, and they felt that we were doing a lot of work, I know, in a relationship manner. And we were, because we really got on well with Heidi and Amit and the 2 guys down there that we're working with. But what it was really is they were going through a process, enabled us to learn about their business. We built a process where this isn't, first you have to learn about us. No, the very way that the process works is we've assessed your whole business. We know who does what, who doesn't do what has gone on, what hasn't gone on, where you are today, what your tech looks like, what your revenues from that look like, what your sales cycles look like, where you're selling, who sells to whom. All of those things we got from the assess piece. We researched the market. We went out on our own. What we didn't know is they were already in the acquisition process. And one of the competitors that we'd identified, we were like, look, these guys are really good. They've got their SEO on pack. Their marketing's really good. And actually that was the company that was acquiring them. So they already knew that we'd established where they sat in the market. And so we didn't know we were ticking boxes off for them without even knowing we were doing it, because they were unable to talk to us about it because they're under NDA whilst this deal's going on. So then we ended up in a short amount of time, we got them ranking for about 200 keywords on across their SEO in the top 100. So you go from sort of 0 to that number. They also had another company in the US that was also called DSSI. And so there was like this share of search that was going on, and we had to identify that for them and show them how it was working. And obviously now they're going to lose that because they'll be absorbed by Procure Analytics they were bought by. And so we've gone through that whole process, and Heidi's going to be interviewed for the book. She's going to talk in the book about us. And she's also told her boss that when they open up their new ABM program at Procure Analytics, that they want us to come back, right? So like these are really good stories, because You help change someone's mindset. You help them understand what it was. And now that they've gone into a company that has a more mature marketing and go-to-market approach, they are actually like eyes wide open to it. And they were like, we actually know now how much we were doing. We did not know how much business was out there. And we were operating under, we thought we had the business. And I was like, no, like, but the relationship is there. The results were there. I think when we kicked off the ABM program, we activated about 50 accounts for them in the sales engagement process. And then obviously when the transaction went through, everything's been paused. But so we optimized their SEO. We've helped them change their website messaging, how it was perceived. There was some friction with that because people own things, and you can be well married to something that you do, but we're like, look, the data's telling us this. I know you think this, but the data's telling us this way. And so when you want a data-driven approach that becomes a flywheel approach, periodically you go back and you revisit things in here. You get to see good results across the marketplace. And we help launch an IT company that were offshore IT, and we use it on their sales enablement program. And there's about 85 different things we do. So imagine when we would wholly manually deliver this, we have like a project management tool that has 85 swipe files in there from discovery right the way through to product and feature releases. And so we believe that go-to-market isn't sales. It isn't marketing. It's how the organization as a whole, finance, leadership, marketing, sales, customer success, product, they are go-to-market. And that for me, you can't win with all of that in alignment. And revenue operations doesn't quite get you there unless you bring the product data back in, because what RevOps will do, they'll say, oh, this is who we sell to, and this is our segments, and that's great. But what the product usage data will do is say, this is the value that those segments get from our product. And that's when you start to win, because you will simply say, well, when we're selling to these people, this is what we're seeing. 90% of them, 80% of them are getting this value out of it. And so when we approach them, when we go out with our emails, when we market to them, when we call them, we know what we should be prepping for and how to position, rather than coming with this mindset of, I've got this one product or multiple products and we position it this way. No, you've got 5 or 6 different buyers, today's committee. Want to talk about that?
That's
out to 5 people.
Yeah. No, okay. So when I boil this down, for me, there were like some points that I would like to go over with you. So
Sure.
one of them, I think it's combined with the other. It's like a lot of bias and assumptions that is pre-existing. And that is, I think the other one I written down was like the culture and change aspect. I think those are kind of linked together.
Yep.
And when you mentioned a little bit more in the beginning, like they have hired other marketing agencies and they just like provided bad work, basically.
Yeah.
So which one would you like to tackle first? The bias, assumptions, and culture, or like the bad behavior from agency?
I think it's all a big melting pot. And so let me start with, I think the problem for consultants and agencies is that the internal culture of the business will decide whether you succeed or fail. I think pretty much it's out of your hands, right? Because agencies are deemed as just hired help. You're just here to help me do something. And the moment you stop producing, see you later. And so they become transactional, and actually they're relegated to non-decision makers quite quickly. So then you are literally just the help. But what that also breeds is, that as I mentioned from the internal culture, is that sometimes some of these companies have hired 10 agencies, 10 groups of consultancies. And actually the internal culture is never going to change. What they do is they go through tick box motions of, we identified these problems this year, we brought in a consultant, the consultant didn't work. And then the next year they go and they do the same thing. The problem with that is that the people in the businesses, they see it and it comes, oh God, oh yeah, like, why am I bothering?
Again,
it's just that nothing changes around here. All that we do is we go through these processes, and we've built in, we've brought in Bain and Co. And now we've brought in this guy on his own. It doesn't matter who we bring in. it's ultimately going to end up in the same place. Inertia. No one does anything. The status quo isn't going to change. And so that's going to come from the top, but also because a lot of the time, these initiatives that are started at the top with the CEO, if you don't have the right middle management and team leaders, that won't filter down to the grassroots level. And those people are the people that actually help you deliver on that. And so, there's a lot that goes on there. And also you've got people that just hired, that fiefdom mindset, if you understand what I mean. It's like, we're not aligned. I'm not going to align with that team. We are, sales are notorious for this. We're sales. We bring the money. We don't need to worry about anyone else. You guys need to make sure you retain the companies that we sell to. You guys, you just need to give us better leads. And that is still a conversation that happens today, even though we talk about better alignment. I mean, there was a stat from Gartner in their 2023 go-to-market data play report. They said 70% of go-to-market strategy fails because of internal misalignment. 70%. I mean, that's a huge data set that they've analyzed there. And the alignment, if we just focused on that, alignment's difficult. If alignment is difficult, you've got cultural problems, you've got people problems, you've likely got technical, text problem. That means the data isn't aligned. You've got agencies that have been bought in by either team. You can have, instead of like one agency working across the revenue operations model, you've got one agency with sales, one agency potentially with marketing, and maybe another agency working on the customer success. These three agencies aren't even working together, right? So you're not even solving the problem, you're just exacerbating it. Right? And then we talked about bad behavior on the agency side. Agencies that aren't actually geared up to deliver on what they say that they are, right? And so there's no infrastructure, there's no predictable way of doing things. They might know how to run ads, they might know how to do these things, but you typically find that they're like, oh, we'll set this up and then we'll run some tests. And it all sounds like the things that you should be doing, but then where's your measurement? Where's your pivoting tables? Like, where's your experimental things that you're going to be running if we run into these problems? And a lot of agencies, you could peel back the layers and do that. The other side of that on the consultancy side is they get paid a lot of money to do all this research, which is why often you hear clients say, we don't want to do the research, because they get a pretty PDF presentation. There's like, I've just spent 20 grand, waited 3 months, and all you've given me is a PowerPoint. And so you need more agencies like us. I think agency consultancy, that they need inherent practice. They know that they do X, Y, and Z, and the outcomes are there. So when you do all of this research, what we're then able to do is build your sales enablement materials. We're able to show you how to talk to your customers in marketing. Like these things build out and support things. It's not, oh, this is just a process that you go through. These are the outcomes that you're going to get. And these are the experiments that you should be running once you've got those outcomes.
Yeah, that is especially on the agency and consulting side. Like it's like, what are the actual deliverables, and in what way are you going to facilitate change that needs to take place? And then if there's like internally, like the culture is maybe even prohibiting like this change because either there's misalignment, the buy-in isn't there, it becomes very difficult to actually make a dent in what's happening.
Yeah.
But what are some of the the root causes, for example, that like certain teams are just, or certain businesses even, are like underperforming?
Yeah, I think there's this notion of where a company should put their effort. And what I mean by that is not just it to focus on sales or does it focus on marketing, but like strategically, where's it put its effort, right? We've just come in off the back of the biggest buoyant financial period in recent history, which means we've basically been in a bubble, if we want to call it that. We've been in this SaaS, fintech, cloud-based software bubble for so long that there wasn't actually a lot of need for good business, strategic decision-making, operational efficiency. All of these things these are things people are trying to solve today. Before, they were just bailing themselves out by raising another round. I'll do a Series A, a Series B, et cetera, et cetera. And it was like, well, that model was always going to blow up. There was no way that, we periodically go through depressions anyway. So the model itself didn't make sense. And so a lot of people have decided that good business practice was unnecessary. Get me results became more necessary. I've give you this money. I don't care about that stuff. You just need to give me the return on this money. And so people became inclined quite naturally to just avoid anything that slowed them down or perceptually slowed them down. Because actually what you'll find is when people take the time to do things right, they actually in the longer term have the best results. If you read books like Good to Great, for example, they talk about the best performing businesses. They're not these tech firms that shortcut everything. The tech stack isn't going to be the thing that solves things. Actually, the biggest asset you need are the right bums on seats, like our people. Because people can move a business far, far faster than technology can, right? And even if we look at it in terms of forward-thinking decision makers, if you've got people that just like the status quo, where's the business going? If you've got people that are forward thinking and they see the future of AI in their company and they see robots and they see all this other stuff that's coming over the horizon saying, actually, we could look at how we can shift our workforce to incorporate this stuff to make other people's lives easier. Do we really want people crawling under machines trying to fix them, or do we want a robot that gets in there and does? Like those sorts of things we need to be thinking about, but a lot of people aren't. They're just like, okay, in the go-to-market space, we just read it back there. Let's talk about revenue operations. Revenue operations is on the rise. You know why it's on the rise? This is a plaster for bad business behavior. No one's been doing it right for so long. Now all of a sudden, we need revenue operations because if we can tie everyone back together, I was like, that should be good business acumen from the outset. Why I like Arise, it's inbuilt. If you took Arise today and I just gave it to you and you just followed it A to Z, you'd end up with a growth model into revenue operations, because the plan is, how do I communicate my value? How do I enable my buyer to buy from me? And how do I pre-plan to onboard, retain, upsell, and cross-sell them? They're the three main things that we want. Obviously, you've got positioning, messaging, storytelling, all those things that come into those silos. Ultimately, that's what we want you to do. We want you to be pre-planned for everything. And itself is tech, process, and a growth model. So what we've said is the recent rise of revenue operations is a band-aid to poor operational governance, poor business planning, and the misalignment of internal teams.
There's a lot to unpack there. I like the RevOps thing. There have been some recent like terminations of businesses that were actually selling into RevOps. I think it's just because of what you said. There's like fundamentally there needs to be things that need to be done differently, and for me, RevOps is a very much like a supporting function within the business that is basically just creating like a very good overview of all the systems and information that you have, and hopefully is able to like link everything together so stuff makes sense.
Well, let's just pick a little piece of that apart. That was enablement, right? Again, most early stage firms, well, what do I need that for? I'm trying to figure out who I'm selling to. And I will come back at you and say, well, if you're not trying to figure out who you're selling to, you're never going to figure it out, at least not in any decent amount of time. Because if you plan, we hypothetically believe we are going to sell more to CMOs than growth managers or demand gen managers, then you have already said we have a plan on what we think we could do. So that means you can put a process in place to measure and understand is what we're doing right? Is what we're saying right? Are we doing the voice of the customer piece? Are we speaking to these people? Then you'll get startups say, oh, I've not sold my product yet, so I can't go and speak to people. I'm like, well, you've got Winter, you've got respondent.io, you've got all these platforms out there that are preset for people that meet your personas, your ICP, that you can go and interview. This is my value prop. What do you think? Am I communicating about? Do you use this language around this? What job would you be hiring this piece of technology to solve in your business? Right? Listen, I'm talking to the person that does this for companies, right? You're definitely align with me here.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So there are for me, it goes into like different stages basically. So
Mhm.
if you're in like the early stage of your business, it doesn't matter if you're like a SaaS company or whatever. Like talk to people, like
Yes.
get a good understanding of like what it is that they are experiencing right now, like problem focused, what it is that they're trying to do to solve for it, and exactly like what the desired outcome is. A little more like the jobs to be done framework,
Yep.
basically.
Yep. Exactly
And
that.
I would even say, because I'm like stuff like Winter, I'm a big fan of what they do. Like I think it's a very like quick time to value proposition that they have. But as a founder, like you need to have like a very good understanding of the people or that you serve, basically. So I would always advise them to do it themselves. And I can
Yeah.
also because when you're doing the research, you're talking hopefully to the right people as well. It's also again like part of becoming like known in your target market for solving this specific problem. So that is like do it yourself. Once you're a bit more further ahead, like keeping the voice of the customer into everything that you do is, I think, essential. Because,
Yeah.
like, if you're always focused on what you do from the inside looking out, and you're trying to like scale strategies that are basically not the best, or you're just trying to do more volume of something that isn't converting, like, that's just, I think,
Cool.
a waste of resources. So, again, like it doesn't matter who it does, like you can talk to people and you have the different stages within the life cycle of the customer that you can get like different insights from. For example, like the positioning and messaging, you can talk to people that have, for example, are a bit further along in your sales cycle. And if they drop off, it could be that there's something wrong with like the expectations that they had based on what you were presenting them, or
Yep.
like there are many factors that go into this. And then once you're a bit more mature, like also like the competitive intelligence comes in there, like like a very good understanding of what it is and who it is that you're competing against. Because most people think that their competitor is basically the same company in
No.
like their category,
Yeah.
but you're competing against a lot more things because you're also competing against like different solutions that might be able to solve like a similar problem to yours. So that it becomes a lot wider, and like the status quo is then something that a lot of people then say they lose to, but that's not true. Like the indecision is also a decision that's
Yeah.
being made.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more nuance to everything. So like
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
could
yeah,
go on about this for days, but
no, I want to echo that because even when I talk about my business, right, I teach on 5 accelerators, right, and I talk about my own business, and I say, like when I am assessing my competitive landscape, I'm assessing Upwork, Fiverr, someone's nephew that sits in their bedroom and offers the price for cheap, so a fractional who's worked in an industry for some period of time. Like, I'm not necessarily just talking against other agencies. I do have a unique differentiator in terms of I have my own proprietary approach, and we're going to have our own software. And so that becomes a little bit of a difference and helps people come to an understanding that these are the experts, but also I slim down everything that I offered. I don't actually lead with the smorgasbord of services because they're immaterial. I do 4 things. I help optimize your go-to-market. I help you build a strong revenue operations program. I help you run an account-based strategy, or I help you spin out a new product or service. The mechanisms of getting you there, they come later. The first thing this guy wants to know, or lady wants to know when she comes to my website is, can you actually solve my problem? Because the premise of I've got demand gen, ABM, websites, blah, blah, all those things that the person that's on your website has actually identified what their problem is. And if you don't talk about how you solve the problem and you just list the solutions, well, how did I even identify with the solution? Because as yet,
but
they
they
still
can't
haven't
link it.
made the
Yeah.
decision on what it is. And they might just say, I've got a lead gen problem. But that doesn't mean that they know they need either ABM or demand gen or inbound marketing or content marketing or digital or social or paid. They don't know. That's why they're with you looking at your website. So you have to talk problem statements, outcome statements, not provision statements, because that doesn't help anyone make the decision. I think that leans back into what you said about indecision. You don't differentiate, and get to the point quick enough. And yeah, that's hard for people.
Yeah, and this is also for me where like the data-driven decision making comes in, because a lot of companies say that, yeah, we are data-driven. We look at numbers and conversion metrics and how long things take, and then yeah, of course, everybody does that, but like there's a story behind this
Yeah.
that you're not able to tell because you are not talking to the people that are actually going through these different stages that you have predefined. So there's like a lack of understanding there. And
Yeah.
then this also then results into, yeah, but this is the way that we've been doing things forever. And it has worked for us suboptimally more often than not. And we're going to invest in this and just pump up the volume.
Yeah.
And then basically investing resources, money, and time into like stuff that is just not helping out. And this is
Wow.
also back to what you said with like, yeah, like we're bringing in a new agency and
Yeah.
we're just keep going through this motion over and over and over without
And
like taking like a look fundamentally at what is actually happening and where can we then improve upon or like start doing new things. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like we've got a new website coming out, right? And in that content, like we've taken away the sense of long-term engagement and we're focusing on problem solving. Very much like this is going to be, the program takes this long, the results will be in 90 days. And then by the end of 12 months, you should be able to do these other things too. So we're saying we do this piece of work for 30 days and monitor it for the next 90. That's going to give you one set of results. And then over the 12 months, you should have a bigger kick up, which should be this, as long as you obviously, all of our approach is more like this now. But what's interesting about that is that I believe the world's going to fundamentally change its buy-in mechanisms, right? I don't believe the long-term agency engagement is going to remain anymore, especially in more of the tertiary services like content production, ad, like the product that we're building is looking at, is taking the best information we can gather about ads and then showing you what your competitors are doing, how they're doing it, what's working, and then saying to you based on your segment, this is how you want to communicate this opportunity to your own segment. And here's some guidance about what's been working there. Now, I don't want people to think that you could then just go and do this, because thinking that you can do it this way is like saying, I'm going to go and hire the head of marketing from my direct competitor. That person comes in thinking they're just going to run the same playbook that they ran in their
Yeah.
business. And then they find out that the nuances between your two businesses, that's where the value is. And they didn't even understand them nuances. And you kick yourself backwards. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah. I think this is also part of the reason why tenures of like senior leadership in the go-to-market functions is so short, because
Yeah.
they probably bring a playbook that has worked once, maybe, and then they try to implement it elsewhere, and then results are just not showing up. And then, well, let's bring in the next one and
Yeah.
let's see what their playbook might bring. Yeah, there's it lacks the fundament again, and I
Yeah.
think this is where you guys are actually very helpful in through this like structured process. Like
Yeah.
we're going to actually take a look at your business, what is working for you, what isn't working for you, what is happening, what are the segments that we serve, who are the personas that we serve, what
Mhm.
is it that we provide to them,
Yeah.
and then all trickles down from there.
Yeah.
And maybe this is like also a good segue into you to maybe like tell a bit more about like the first step of the process, like the assess part.
Yeah.
Like because what is it that you are going to look for initially? You've already mentioned certain things, but
Yeah.
can you maybe elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. So first, like, so there's a couple of sections. Like we've got your tech stack. So we'll audit the tech stack. So that means a full deep dive on all the technology you're using, how you're using it, what you're using it for, reporting, all of that stuff, results, all of that stuff. But even the adoption rates of the products, right? So sometimes we might even show you how to save money. That might be one of the low hanging fruit. Listen, you don't need all those pieces of tech. This is the tech stack that you have. I would do it this way. It's not a big change. There's your low hanging fruit. Out of that, you start to learn a lot about the business, especially where there's misalignment, or where you see companies maybe with Salesforce CRM and maybe a HubSpot marketing automation tool as opposed to like where they all go all in on one set of tools. And the differentiation between the belief systems and how they still have their communities, like within your organization. So you've got like a Salesforce community and a HubSpot community within your organization. And I actually had a call with an ESG platform with a CEO that I was pitching one time for an RFP process. And I fired them in the process because I just really couldn't understand. We have this belief system. We have this approach. I pitched you. You told us that you didn't want us to work with you. Then you came back and you said it was not that you didn't want to work with us. You wanted to give some branding element to someone else, which was fine. Like that's a miscommunication. And then there was this thing about who wants what tech. And I just said, look, I'm out. And the CEO called me and I just said to him, look, the job is not to be arguing with people what the tech stack looks like. It's just to get the job done. Like ultimately the tech enables that. I ended up working with a company. Yeah. It didn't end well, but the red flags were there. And that was just to give you kind of like some relevancy. So we'll look at the tech stack. We'll look at your people. We actually go and talk to all of the teams. We talk to them individually, away from team leaders. We want to understand what's really going on, not sit in a room with a team leader where everyone's going to be scared to say anything negative because they're worried about their employment, right? So we want to do that. We do get some bad horror stories. These are the things that typically you don't get when you don't do these things. You start to hear about bad culture, poor hiring, churn of staff and all of that sort of stuff. Then also you start to learn how teams really don't talk to each other because there's a lot of people that don't understand technology buying technology for firms. So they'll know that they perform this function and this technology supports this function. So they're like, oh, for our function, this is one of the top 10 or top 5 suggested platforms for this function. And so they functionally buy. And that's why we always try and get companies to shift to a mindset of there should be a central buying organization for all technology. The reason being is because sometimes in companies, multiple people have got multiple versions of the same tech in different areas. And actually you could probably just one global version or maybe an enterprise version of that same toolkit. So there's people, technology, process, strategy, spend, all those things that we can assess from you. Current positioning. Show me your current strategic document. That's a funny question to ask people. What do you mean? The business plan. Can I see the business plan? Oh, we don't have that. This is the sales strategy. No, I want to see the business plan. Why do you want to see that? Because I want to understand this is the business plan and how do I understand your sales or marketing strategy designed to support that? Like, do you see what I'm saying? It's comes back to what I'm talking about where if you just accept what you're given, how do you know you can do the right thing? But also, if they don't want to give it to you, why do you want to work with that client? It's a two-way street, right? If you don't want to give me the access to the information I need, why?
It's not going to work.
No, it's not going to work. We're in marketing. Why do you need to see the business plan? Because you're supporting the business plan, because your marketing strategy is also to support the sales team. So there's a big part that you play. Like marketing's often the quarterback for the whole business, even though it tends to take the biggest bashing for its performance. It can't win. It can't win most of the time, whether it's doing well or not, right? And then you've got the inherent cultural problems, and so we like to do that. So typically we have 6 questions for the leadership, which are along the lines of, what would you do if you were me? That's one of the questions we like to ask. What would you do if you were in my shoes? And you ask them all separately, because what you're not looking for is a collective. It's all done very separately. And you often find that there's a lot of business leaders that don't agree with what's going on. And you're like, okay, so, you got to be very tactful and delicate with this. So we're going to look at all of those things because that's assessing where you are. Then we'll assess the competitive landscape as well. So we want to understand where you fit in your market, how you're communicating that value, what your product does that other people's products don't. Then during the research phase, actually that probably covers the assessment, but that didn't lead naturally into the research phase. Yeah. So then when we get into the research phase, we'll actually potentially go and sign up for marketing newsletters, book some demos of the product. We definitely want to get into your product. So we'll ask for licenses to explore and check the UX, all those things that like we will go deep. I want to research how other people communicating, what they're communicating, who their audiences look like, what their social media looks like. What is their social presence like? Are they active on LinkedIn? Do we find them spoken about on subcultures like Reddit and all those places? Like we're going through the motions, we're going through all of that. We're then looking at what else do we do in the research phase? Decision-making processes as well. So we start to understand like how the companies come to their decisions, which is interesting.
Yep.
What else have we got on there? Yeah, like it's basically as much research as we can get. Competitive research, personas, interviews, win-loss. Sorry that we do a little bit of that, but we do win-loss, we do customer feedback, we're doing all of that. NPS research, we're looking at the problems that the customers say through customer success, and we're looking at how they're dealt with, how the customer experience comes together. And then we analyze all of that. Then we move into the ideation stage. Now, there's a lot of workshops that start to happen now. So one of the very first ones we do is a service design workshop. And it's actually the crux of the biggest change that we can affect in a business, because it is a cross-functional workshop, and typically it takes a couple of days to get it completed. So we end up with teams rolling in and out. But we start with service design. And to get started, we first have to understand every single problem. So we take the company back and we start challenging their personas. I don't want the persona that supports your narrative. I want the persona that I understand. And what that typically looks like is we'll say, let's research every single challenge, not the ones that are just pertinent to your product or service. Every single challenge this persona faces. And so we had CTO, CRO, CPO, CMO, CS, CSO. Like that's just our business when we did it in our way.
Yeah.
We noticed that really the CMO has the least amount of problems, although they come under the most fire. But the CTO and CPO, they had probably the most, because now they're asked to become more financial focused rather than just product and feature focused. So there was a big shift. And then we said, look, we want to work out three things. What can we solve with our product or service? What can we solve in our marketing channels? And what don't we want to touch at all? Because there's just so many things that are too far removed that would even make sense for you to talk about, right? So if you think about us, we can talk about the direct problems in go-to-market, but what's aligned to that is maybe recruitment. So we can talk to recruitment in our marketing content, but we're not talking about building you a team. If that was recruitment, that would be too far out. So I can't solve that problem, but I can tell you about the types of people you might want to help you build a stronger go-to-market playbook, right? So then that really starts to open people up. And then we go through the 15 questions of service design. And I think one of the biggest ones, and I'm sure this quite willingly, is question that says, how can people find your service? And I can tell you this now, I'll give it free. There are 8 different ways that we found someone can ask the same question on a search engine. And I don't necessarily mean the question language, it's the way that they come at the question. For example, they can ask the question, they could propose a solution that they think is the question, they can ask what the outcome could be. You know, there's 8 different ways. And in the book, I talk about this service design thing. And then I don't give you the answers because I want you to do it. I don't want you to just look, just kind of copy it. But as we're going through the questions, so we list the questions, and then in the second part, I'll say, we found 9 different ways to do this, 15 different ways to approach that, 27 different ways to approach that. And what I want people to start thinking is, am I doing enough? Because the riches are in the niches. It's probably one of the most important American sayings. I know they like to say niches, we say niche, but you know, that saying is so important. And it goes back to something that we just discussed here, Mike, when we said, when you bring people in from a competitor that looks like they do the same thing as you, and then they can't understand the nuances, nuance is a niche. So these things, these percentages, 4% here, 5% there, 3% here, 2% there, you start calculating the impact that those combined have on the bottom line performance. people, like all the talent, all of that stuff, it really starts to add up. So the ideation stage, we go through that. We want you to start thinking about the customer-centric approach that everyone says that they're trying to be.
Yeah.
What they're doing, it isn't. It's what they think customer-centric is. This stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right? So we start there. And then obviously we get into, off the back of all this research, so product research and all of that, speaking to people, we start listening, we start looking at messaging, the new story, differentiation, multiple positioning statements based on the type of people you sell to. So if you are a company that sells to multiple people, you've got 5 people you're selling to, there's 5 things that people are interested in. You need to come at people from their interest, not your product. And so we get into outcome messaging, not pain points and all of that. Everyone's got a pain, but if your pain that you identify isn't the pain of the buyer, she or he just disassociates. That's not my pain. That's not my problem. Go somewhere else. If you talk about an outcome, everyone knows where they want to go. They might not have identified their problem. And that's why outcome statements are much better than problem statements.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because there are different schools of thought on this. Yeah. I think a combination of both can be helpful.
Yeah, kind of A/B test, right? Because even with me, we've got a system. So because we use HubSpot CMS, we're able to run real-time A/B tests. So we're testing. I want a problem statement page. I want an outcome statement page. And yes, I might lose a few people because the problem page won't go to an outcome person. But ultimately, you will soon see what is working for you very, very quickly. But it's a really easy test to run. Do you know what I mean? It is that simple. And it baffles me when people talk about personalization, right? That's one of the other things that we try to cover in the ideation stage. And if there's tools, Mutiny HQ is one, but even with HubSpot, again, they have these smart content areas, and you should be able to say, right, based on our research to these segments, these are the problems that are the jobs they're hiring us to solve, whatever language you want to use around this. So I want to be able to say, if we've identified people in our CRM and they're coming back to our website, I want the narrative on these headers to change, keep talking to the things that they're on. So they're all getting a unique experience, even if it is at an outcome per persona, per segment.
Yeah.
But that's how you get into it. It's not always about, hi, Paul, welcome to my website, because I'm like, well, that's gimmicky, but does it make me want to buy from you? I don't know.
Yeah.
So that ideation stage, you're being creative, but you're basing it on what you've assessed about them,
Exactly.
what you've researched about the future and what's coming over the hill, and where we want to combine that. What can we throw at the wall? What sticks? What makes sense? What doesn't? And then we get into that strategy stage, and then beyond, as we get into there, is like we're making really strategic decisions, and we are highly into segmentation here. We're looking at assets, we're looking at sales enablement, we're looking at marketing strategy, we're looking at customer success, we're looking at the customer journey front to back. And then I always talk about so what are you doing? Big question that you ask people as well is, what do you do once you've got them on board? Oh yeah, we focus on, good NPS, good CSAT. I'm like, but what about, does your content change? For example, your acquisition content probably isn't that useful to someone who now has the product. Like, does your content change for onboarded people? Do you have a direct strategy that says, this is the upsell cross-sell plan for every single customer that comes through us? Or is it a little bit more, we wait for certain signals to happen, and then if we see these signals happen, we do it that way? That's a bit reactive and it's not proactive. And actually, if you can be more proactive, you can actually cajole someone into expanding based on what you learn about the business, right? So you start thinking about the entire life cycle. How do you get them to promote us? What do we need to support that? Are we making sure that they're leaving the testimonials on the G2s and the Capteras and all these other places? And then you get into execution. So that was a short, sharp shrift journey through it all.
Yeah.
And very top line. But believe me, there's 85 different things that get done before we execute anything, right? And some of that is looking at features, pricing strategies in there. So we look at that. So pricing strategy, sales enablement, discovery, personas, positioning, messaging, narrative design, storytelling frameworks, experimentation. So we've written a book on that experiment. I might even, we're putting that in the book, and these are all the things that we think about you should think about running. If you run into this problem, here's some experiments you can run. So when we come to you, we've already thought about these things. If you run into this problem, here's a few experiments we're probably going to run. Like, that makes people feel confident. These guys know what they're doing. If you're not doing that kind of level of stuff in the service industry, wow, you're under pressure because, as you say, AI, Fiverr, Upwork, someone's nephew, CMOs that are now fractionals. You've got all of these challenges in the world.
I think that what you've just explained is this is basically how you run a business.
Thank you. That's why I said it's best
It's
practice. This shouldn't feel revolutionary, but for most people, it's going to be evolutionary.
exactly. Yeah. So I think I've mentioned this before. It's like getting the fundamentals right, like understanding where you are. You do proper research. From these research and ideation phases, you've basically very well been able to articulate like problem statements, if you want to call it like this. And from those problem statements, you go into like this ideation phase where you're going to create like the service design framework or the service design method that you use to come up with like, hey, how are we going to solve for the problem statements that we have basically found. And then that goes then into like the strategy. So how are we going to allocate our resources, time,
Yeah.
energy, effort, etc.? What are the behaviors that we would like to see that's going to drive like the solutions that we've implemented? This comes together with like the experimentation, because even though you've come up with certain things, certain solutions, you want to make sure that what you've actually picked and what you've actually been able to like implement, is it working? If not, like there are many ways in which you can do this.
Yep.
All types of different like testing methods. A/B testing for messaging is probably like one of the most well-known
Yep.
experimentations that's out there. And then it all comes down to like the execution, like actually the change of behavior.
Yeah.
Like what are the new set of behaviors that we want to like basically execute on?
What?
And this should hopefully then be what you would call like a well-run organization.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You even touched on the human part there, right? So when we do
Yeah.
the assessment, skill sets, we might even suggest you got the wrong bums. You might have the right people, but doing the wrong jobs. And,
Yeah.
there's all these things that can happen, but what you've essentially summed up there is right. It isn't a complex process, which is what's great about it, but it's very challenging. It challenges
Exactly.
you to the core of your business. And in fact, sometimes so challenging that people don't continue with the process. Like we've been there. They're like, we're not, no, thanks. So, and there's probably some senior leader that has this vision. And I'm like, I'm not challenging your vision because I'm just using the data. I'm like, I'm coming here with Paul Sullivan's mindset. I've built a proper process that if you follow it, take away all of your gut feeling and wait until the ideation stage and just listen to what you're finding out. And then obviously
Exactly.
there's some of the things that we talked about. You can do some financial modeling around the strategy stage where you can come up with these strategies and you can look at like, your total addressable market, the available market, typical sales
Yeah.
cycle. Like we can build a model in there and say, right, based on this strategy, on this product and what we know about the market, here's what we're proposing. You should be able to hit. Not, what we're going to get, Paul. Well, I don't know until we do it. It's like, well, we can get to some numbers, but it's a model, right? And so we should know what we're working towards. That helps a lot more people because that's when we bring the financial people into this. And that's what we're saying. Like finance doesn't necessarily have to be just the governance of what gets spent and how it gets spent. You actually want your finance team to be thinking more operationally rather than just being an accountant that says yes and no.
That's why forecasting is, I think, also such a hot topic, right? Because like being able to like have a good understanding of where you're going to be financially in the future, and like if you're going to hit like certain milestones, it's also probably going to mean that you're going to have like a need for additional resources, etc. So like your operational and financial planning, they're very much
Yep.
like interlinked to each other.
Yeah. Like brothers.
Also with like the modeling, I'm a big fan of stuff like frameworks and models, etc. But there's like this one quote that always just keeps coming back to me. I don't know who it's from, but it's like I believe it's something like all models are wrong, but some are useful.
Yeah.
And I think this is also like the same, like it's a prediction. Okay, this is what we are going to expect. There's going to be like a bandwidth on either side, but it helps you like understand what the impact could be of certain decisions that you
Yeah. Yeah, and also like when you get underneath these things, like you get into keywords which are useful for both SEO and paid search, right? You can actually start
make.
saying, okay, so if we want to go after this, these are what the numbers are going to look like. That's going to help me make a case for the budget,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
This is the budget, and then we need 20% for experimentation. That's what we need, right? And yeah, you find say, well, we're not going to do that, and that, but we're going to do this, and here's your 20%. That's fine, but as long as the business knows it was presented with something you can look at that makes sense, that is based on historical performance and of market opportunity, and say, okay, this is how we can get ahead and start thinking about what we're going to do this year, rather than making all those decisions and then bringing someone like me in afterwards and saying, can you help us solve it? I can't solve necessarily your problem without going back and going through my process.
Well, I think this is also then a very nice end to this because like the time is not allowing us to go on forever, which
Mhm.
I think we could, to be
But listen,
honest. I think
yeah,
this I think we could like spend an entire week just talking about this, and also like some of the people that you've mentioned, some of the books that you've referenced, the book
mhm.
that you're writing yourself, which I'm going to heavily promote and be one of your first
Thanks.
buyers of. So don't
I'll
worry
make
about
sure I
that.
send you a copy.
Oh, that's awesome. Like I'm a big fan of like books, especially now that like data and AI is basically just so widely spread available, like having like the perspective, like the
Mhm.
more of like thought leadership, implementation, and more of those types of books, they really speak to because then you get like the perspective in that every now and then like all the AI written pieces out there
Yeah,
lack more often. So
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to your book.
Oh, thank you.
So, as we are now at the end of the conversation, there's always like one or like two questions that I would like to close off.
Sure.
One of them is, Paul, because you've had a lot of like experience
Mhm,
in entrepreneurship, you've
mhm.
had multiple businesses yourself, but if you could go back in time and 20 years ago, so it's a very young Paul that you're able to talk, like what would be one thing that you would tell yourself to keep on doing?
In a weird way, the conversation with my younger self would go something like, you need to go deeper. So I picked things up quite quickly, but I didn't really get into the depth of things because what I knew was always enough to get me by. And then I had some intuition, but I think looking back, one of the quotes that stays in my mind is both Einstein and I think Abraham Lincoln both said something very similar, which was, if I look back, I'd spend 95% of my time sharpening my axe and 5%
Yeah.
of my time cutting down the tree. So what I'm trying to say is I would probably emphasize going deeper into things rather than going like maybe mid deep and broad. Is like get deep into something, then move. So that's what I'd probably say to myself.
Yeah, that basically also kind of answers the next question that I would like to ask, and that's like, what is one thing that you would tell yourself to ditch immediately or stop to?
Oh, I'll tell you what, it would be people. Like when
Oh,
I was younger, I was very much into like my ego. I actually, I'll disclose this. When I worked in the investment bank, they used to call me Gucci Paul because all I used to wear was Gucci, and my identity was really wrapped up in clothes. And yeah, like when I look back, it wasn't until I was walking through London a couple of years ago and I bumped into someone and they went, "Ah, it's Gucci Paul." And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I'm 20
Oh,
years out of that industry, and someone still remembers that about me. And I think it's embarrassing. I think I would rather be like just the guy that was, everyone just wants to be genial with and hello with. And he was quite, he's a very intelligent guy. I'd rather be known for being nice. And I don't mean being nice and weak. This guy's a really nice guy. Not, this was that flash guy, Gucci Paul he used to wear was Gucci all the time. It's like, don't be that man. And actually, I think the other part to that would be rather than spend all my money on clothes trying to impress other people, I should have been putting that money away trying to impress myself when I got to this age. So I think that's wraps
yeah.
up that answer.
I think this is something that can be very valuable, especially for people that are early in their journey.
Yeah.
It's like, don't just think about like impressing people, but have like a long-term vision of not just for your business, but also for yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
Basically, like who is the person that you want to become, and like what is it that you actually want to be known for? I think that's a very good like personal exercise for
Mm.
like
And also,
do.
I think just to wrap that up, sorry, become worldly, own memories and not
Yeah,
things. That's what I would say. Like,
I think that would go very much into this.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Paul. Like what is the best way for people to make like the first step into like getting to the core of what we just discussed, and how are people going to be able to find you?
Yeah, I mean, AriseGTM.com is where the website sits. So that's always a good way. I'm pretty responsive on LinkedIn. So I think my thing is Paul Sullivan 6 is like my LinkedIn URL. I don't change it. I'm not,
Well, yeah, we'll put it in the show notes to make
yeah.
sure that people are able to
And I
find you.
think TikTok, I talk a lot on TikTok. It's like, I don't know why I just chose that one. I think because it's a big search engine, but also the Instagram thing still was a little bit more showy offy. And if you heard what I just said, I don't really buy into that living my best life thing. So yeah, there's a couple of channels there, and then as you get to know me, we've got a Slack channel and we've got WhatsApp, and yeah, I'm an easygoing person. I'm not like, oh, I don't speak to anyone. Definitely not like
Love
that.
it. Well, I'm going to make sure that people are able to find you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul, for sharing your story, and for everybody that is still listening. Thank you so much, and until the next episode. Bye bye.
Thanks, mate.